Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com. If you haven't been following my channel, I'm 82 years old and I'm telling my life story. and if you want to get caught up, start at the first story. Just go to my click on my smiling face, go to my YouTube homepage, and click on playlists. All right. So anyway, in the last video, I had just purchased a sailboat. Now, by the way, you're going to see a few more pictures now, because along the way there somewhere, I sold my 41 Ford pickup for enough money to buy a 35mm camera. So I'm going to have a few more pictures, not a lot, but anyway, a few more pictures than I've had so far. So anyway, coming to a stop sign here, make sure it's a four-way stop. I'll tell those guys to go. I'll go ahead and go. Hopefully I'm not going to get run over. Anyway, so I do get a few more pictures. All right, so I got a couple more stories about the sailboat, and then we'll move on to to other things. First of all, I had the sailboat for 12 years, got it in 1974 and got rid of it in 1986. So I had a lot of sailing experience, had a lot of things happen, some memorable stories and some not so memorable. One of the humorous ones is my wife bought me a Heathkit depth finder. Now, Heathkit was a company, you buy the kit and then you build it together. So there was a Christmas present. So anyway, so we went out to, I got it all put together, got it installed, went out to try it out, and I had a friend named Ron who liked going sailing with us, and he knew a little bit about sailing, but he'd go sailing with us. And so I wanted to watch the depth finder, which was down in the cab, and you could actually see it from out in the cockpit behind there where the steering was. But anyway, so I said I'll just let him steer. I told him just go along the edge of the river and we'll watch the depth finder. Now, parts of the Snake River were over 200 feet deep, but it varied. So we're going along, and I'm sitting down there and I'm watching that, you know, and it's like 80 feet and 90 feet and 70 feet. And then we're going along, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, like 60 feet, 50 feet, 40 feet. So I figure, well, we're getting to some shallower parts. 30 feet. And I thought, what's going on here, you know? And then 20 feet. And so I thought, I better check something out. Well, before I could even do that, what he had done is, you don't sail a sailboat into a cove, which is what he did. He just followed the edge of the river into a cove, because you got to turn around and come out, and then you got to do some fancy sailing to do that. Well, and the cove was shallow, so naturally our centerboard. Now, centerboard is on my boat was a 350-pound piece of half-inch steel, and it was on a bolt, so it could swing down, and you could crank it up and crank it down when you needed to. So anyway, so the centerboard, get by the truck. The centerboard struck first, and in all the confusion, I should have just said, leave the centerboard down, but but they did, and then so anyway, we finally got it out of there with a little damage to the rudder. So after all the sailing and everything, I never run aground until I got a depth finder. And that was the only time I ever ran aground. So anyway, so that's one story. Another time, well, first of all, I point out, sailing is kind of interesting, especially on the Snake River, because in the area where we lived, you never knew when you're going to get a windstorm, and so you go sailing, and the wind would come up, and you'd get into a storm. And then also, sometimes you go say, and a storm would come along, but it would just be rain. And there's nothing worse and more boring than sitting in the cab looking out the hatch door, watching it rain, waiting for it to quit. So anyway, that one time we went sailing and got into a storm, and the storm kept getting a little worse and a little worse and a little worse. And so I was trying to sail, and we were going into the wind. Now, you can sail a sailboat into the wind from an angle and make some headway. I'm not going to be like my dad and try to explain all the details, but so I was doing that, and then finally it got to be where the waves were getting so big, which for me was fun, but the waves were getting so big that it wasn't pleasant for my family. So I had my wife steer the boat. By that time, by the way, we turned the motor on. I went up front to take down that front sail, which is called the jib, just in case you're wondering. And as I was up front, we hit some waves that threw the front of the boat up and then dropped it down, and my feet actually came off the deck. I was hanging on to a guy wire, but my feet came off the deck because it went down so fast. So anyway, got the sails down and went back and was just steering with the motor and fighting the waves. And so the sad part is my little boy, who now is the son that I live with, he was down there, and his mom was watching out the window, and she said something like, "Here comes a big wave." And so he got up from where he was to look over and look out the window, and when we hit that wave, the boat just stopped. And of course he was up on his feet, and he flew forward and ran his head into the bulkhead, into a bulkhead, and got a pretty bad bump on his head. So anyway, that was a storm that you don't remember. And then of course there's times when you just remember it was really nice. Lower Monumental Dam, got a Google Earth photo of it here. Anyway, you go up through the locks, and then you go on up and about a mile beyond the dam, there's this little cove, and we went up there, and so nice in the evening, nice, calm, enjoyable day, and we got up there and anchored. My wife cooked some dinner, and the sun was going down. And by the way, that night we got to see some northern lights in the little cove. But it was calm, it was subdued, no traffic, no guys in speedboats. That was always a headache. But anyway, so we all, and so we had dinner and washed dishes. And I remember when we went out on the back in the what they call the cockpit, sat down to enjoy the stars and stuff. And all of a sudden, bzz, bzz, these buzzing sounds came along, and it was bats. So it was kind of disturbing. So they didn't land, they didn't touch you, they just was coming by to see who you were, I guess. Anyway, so that kind of spoiled that, but it was a nice place to camp out. So anyway, so that was a nice one. And then I probably should, before I run out of time here, I probably should tell you the worst calm day that I ever had. And let's see, where does this road go? Okay, this will be good. And that was, remember now, I had gone through a divorce and remarried, and I had 2 children from my first marriage. And so one weekend I took them out on Saturday or Sunday to go sailing with me, and it was just me and them. And so I had this little blow-up raft that they could play with. But anyway, so we went out, and there was hardly any wind. I mean, there was there was a little tiny breeze, and it would move the boat. Boat weighed quite a bit. It had 800 pounds of lead in the bottom, and then that 350-pound piece of steel, and so oh, that's another story. But anyway, I have to tell you that. Anyway, so you know, they were getting kind of bored just going along slow. So my daughter, she said, "Can I get in the little rubber boat, swim around the boat, and swim around or paddle around the sailboat?" I said, "Yeah." So she got in there and went around. Pretty soon, by the way, they were both excellent swimmers. If you've been following my channel, when I was studying for my license, I would study in the morning and then take them to go swimming in the afternoon. So they were excellent swimmers, so I wasn't too worried about them. My son came up and he said, "Next time Katie comes around to the front, can I jump into the boat with her?" And I said, "Yeah, you know." So he jumped into the boat. The only thing is, it tipped over, and they both went in the water. And I'm standing there with my hand on the tiller and just kind of watching what's going on. Well, then, because there was a little bit of movement, the boat was moving. There was enough movement that the little raft had turned upside down and was coming along on the left side of the boat where I was standing, and I could see her hands were trying to push it up to turn it over. Now, I should have just left it like it was, because she was so good, I didn't need to worry, but I did. So I jumped in, came back up, went over to the raft, and she wasn't under it anymore. And so then I looked around, she wasn't there, and I told my son, I says, "You swim around the boat that way, and I'll swim around this way." And so we swim around, and she wasn't anywhere to be found. And by the way, when things like that happen, the water turns black. So then I said, "Well, let's go around the other way." We went around the other way. We couldn't find her, and then pretty soon I heard this little whimper behind me, and it was her just surfacing. And so I went over and grabbed her and pulled her, and we put her in the boat, and she had a terrible, terrible headache. And I asked her what happened. Well, see, when I jumped off the boat, I let go of the tiller, I let go of everything, and the boat started to turn. So she had decided she's not going to try to tip that over, but she dived down in and then come up and do it from the outside. Well, she dove down in, and then by that time the boat was turning, and she came up underneath the boat and hit her head. And if you've ever hit your head swimming underwater, it's more painful. So anyway, she hit her head. Well, then I don't know if she remembered what happened, but she was underwater all that time, and while we were looking for her. And so I grabbed her, we put her in the boat, laid her on the bed. She had a terrible headache. And so anyway, that was a scary time, and it was calm water. I got one more story, and about run out of time here. Well, the cove that we stayed in that one time from the previous video, across the river from Ayers, let's see, I think I'll go this way. I think, we'll see. Anyway, we went in there one time just to anchor and enjoy a lunch or something. And as we were coming in, generally what you do is you coast in, and then when you get the centerboard pulled up and all that stuff, then you put the anchor out. Well, for some reason on that day, we got the sequence moved around, and so threw the anchor in with the centerboard down, and of course the sailboat was still coasting into the little cove, and then the centerboard came along next to the anchor line, and then the boat turned a little bit and it got tangled on there, and then I decided, I got to pull up the centerboard. And so I went in there and I started into the cab and I started cranking up the centerboard, and it got about halfway up and jammed. And so I thought, I couldn't, there's no way I could get it to go down from inside of the cab. And as it turned out, I had my snorkel gear with me. And so what you do is you put on your swimming trunks and your snorkel gear, and you jump in, swim, take a big breath, swim underneath of the boat, and then when you get underneath the boat, then you put your feet, you get upside down, put your feet against the bottom of the boat, of the hull, and then you grab the line that's tangled up, that's stuck up in the, it's jammed up in the what they call the trunk, and so you pull that rope really hard, and that should pull down the steel, the piece, 350-pound piece of steel, and get the rope back out of there. And so I had to be really careful because I didn't want that steel coming down and hit me. Anyway, so we got it, I got it out, and then we learned a lesson, and that was the end of that. So anyway, those are some stories, and I think what we're going to do is in the next video we're going to move on, and it's going to be to a place where in my life where actually we had a whole lot of things change. So the next one, there'll be some changes in my life. It's one of those life-changing experiences, and so I hope you'll be around to watch that. In the meantime, I want to thank you for watching my videos, and God bless.